about the flow of students to and from America and around the world. It's always a big event in Washington. The newspapers get it, I think, midnight on Monday. So Monday, which is early Monday morning, so it may be an item of news. There certainly are newsworthy numbers in Roger Good's latest census. But behind all of the numbers, there are also stories about what international education means and what it means to countries and our world as international mobility increases. And the one event we have at the National Press Club is kind of the spotlight moment, but the spotlight wouldn't work if we don't have the books and resources such as the professor you'll hear from tonight produces, that tells the story behind the numbers and the impact of education and educational change on society. I asked him what the title of the book he'd really like to write next is, and perhaps you'll share that title, but it does tell you a little bit about how impactful these changes are. Now at the Institute, we believe that international should be a part of everybody's education. It should be a central part of what it means to be educated. But it's pretty tough in a place like America. How many people here have a passport? Well, 60% of our citizens don't have a passport, and half of those who do are over the age of 60, so they're getting a passport to get on a ship or a bus to go with other Americans and speak English and see things that people think Americans would like to see. And the study abroad numbers are unfortunately very small. We've at the Institute launched a commitment called Generation Study Abroad to try to double the numbers of Americans who study abroad and do it by the end of this decade, try to get to 600,000. We call it our moonshot because it's really going to be very difficult. If we let the rate of natural increase and growth achieve a doubling, it would require up to out the year 2037. So we have a very small number of our college students studying abroad, and I think part of the reason we're all here tonight is to discover the world we share and how, at different levels, we can make international a part of what it means to be educated. And we're increasingly discovering that you've got to do it not only at the postgraduate level, but at the secondary and even elementary level. And it's not just about learning language, it's about planting the seeds that it's important to get out of the world we share. So I'm delighted to welcome you to the Institute. Roger, thank you for putting together this evening, and I hope now you will welcome the group. Very nice to see you.
Hello everyone, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Rekha Puri, founder of LINEglobal, and I'm so excited to have all of you here. LINEglobal is really an attempt to shift the paradigm about impressions about India. It's about, let's not go save India, but let's work with India and learn with India. And you can learn more about our work on our website. There are plenty of board members here today, and me, and we'll be happy to talk to you as well. Thank you, Mr. Goodman and Radhika Bhandari. We're so humbled, inspired to be at IIE. It's like, we're this starting little organization, and they're this giant in the field of international education, but we're so inspired, and we really want to rethink the work they're doing with older kids, because we really believe it starts with the younger kids. We have to do it in schools to have impact to create global citizens. Emily McCarran, thank you so much. Emily works at the Puno School in Hawaii, and she worked her magic to get Mr. Young ZHAO here today. So thank you, Emily. Mr. Young ZHAO, thank you so much. You just got off the plane and you have more energy than all of us put together, and enthusiasm, and I really, really appreciate that. We're looking forward to hear your ideas and how it will affect our work. Thanks to all the LINEglobal board members, especially Rajiv Kothari. We have a wonderful reception after, great wine, great food, don't go away, stay for that, and that's thanks to Rajiv Kothari. story. It's a personal story, and those people are in the room today. Because LINEglobal is about personal connections. So I will highlight 3 people in this room today that I hope you get a chance to talk to. The others 2 who went to India. But we'll start with a person who went to India and is doing amazing work, and that's Jennifer Donovan. Talk to Jennifer about her wonderful biodiversity project and how she's continued work and got more and more schools in India involved in what she's doing. Then we have a person who hasn't gone to India yet, but has started the work, and that's Gina Marcel, right there. And Gina will be going to India, but she's starting it the other way, with technology, with classrooms in India. And then there's a person who's here from India, and that is Aisha. Is she out there? So Aisha is, we met Aisha when we went to India, and we did a wonderful professional development workshop. And she was there, and she was so inspired and excited by us that today she's a student at Teachers College. But we're actually more inspired by her because she makes this work real. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dominic Randolph. Dominic Randolph is the head of school at Riverdale. He's on the board of LINEglobal, but most importantly, he's my mentor, and he's the first person who helped start LINEglobal with me. Thanks, Dominic.
Thank you, Rekha. Thank you, the Institute. It's wonderful to have us here. What a great space this is. So thank you very much, Dr. YONG ZHAO, for coming to speak to us, especially since you're traveling from one place to the other, dropping in here, and I think getting on another plane. So thank you very much to doing that. I think, my background, my grandmother was Belgian, Flemish-speaking Belgian, who came to travel from Belgium after the First World War and came to the UK at that point, to London. Met a husband there who was actually a sort of Scots-Irish mixture of lots of different types of Anglo-Saxon and Celtic sort of blood. And I think of someone at that period coming to a country that was actually quite xenophobic and not really embracing of people who are coming from foreign countries. And I think of the that mindset that is so siloed and so unable to connect with people. And it's wonderful to see a group of people that are doing work to try and break down those silos and make some wonderful things happen. I think I've been really focused on trying to understand even, I think probably everyone in their lives tries to understand themselves and tries to understand their makeup. And I've had the great privilege of working in the Middle East, in Europe, in North America. And it's been such a wonderful learning experience. Probably my greatest learning experience is being married to my dear French wife. And so for a sort of Brit, half Brit, to be married to a Frenchman is always, we continually are dealing with cultural explorations on a daily basis. We've been married for 20 years. But I think one of the questions for me as an educator is how do we, and I think this resonates very much just in a brief conversation we had before, how do we build and develop a type of mindset in our young people that allows them to go out confidently into the world and to make connections in organic ways, not in forced ways, with other people around the globe. It's such, I had another conversation with I think it was Rajika, that we had a conversation about saying it's essential, this is an essential capacity that you have to be able to do right now. And you have to be able to have that ability just to go out and meet people. And so how, I think it's a critical question for schools and institutions of how do we create that mindset in people. As I've got to know Dr. Zhao's work, it's clear that he's been thinking about not just, I've been looking for someone like you actually for a long time, so we're not going to get enough time to actually talk now, but how do you bring a convergence around things like creativity, entrepreneurial thought, and global citizenship? How do you bring all those things, different things together, 21st century skills? Schools are struggling right now of do we just add everything in, or can we actually make sense for our young people about these various trends that are going on in the globe? And it seems to me this evening we're going to have someone who's going to make sense for us of some of those very different trends that are pushing and pulling us. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. So thank you for coming here. His bio, I'm not going to read his bio. His bio says it all there. And it's just a wonderful biography. Someone who's really engaged in this work and pushing the limits of it. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're all looking forward to seeing you this evening. Thank you very much again for coming here. And thank you again for the Institute. But one plug that I do want to do is I want to say something about LINEglobal quickly. Reka, basically I think, it all emanates from Reka. And just a sort of quick conversation we had. I am very interested and have been interested over the years of how do you understand, how do people who are, it's very hard to understand a country like India, and there's lots of stereotypes and ways that India is viewed, especially even, let's say, in the UK. And how do you break down some of those misunderstandings and easy stereotypes? And it seems to me the idea of getting people in a sort of grassroots way, which I think also resonates with your work, to actually communicate, teachers communicating in ongoing ways using technology, people visiting each other and making it into sort of a robust exchange. That seems to me like vital work, and it's vital work in our schools. I'm really glad that Reka's doing it. I'm really glad to be part of it, and I hope people after this evening will be reaching out to her and to me and to other board members to learn more about how we can really leverage this organization and the work they're doing. So thank you very much. It's a privilege to be involved with it. Thank you very much for all you've done. So on to the staff for this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's really beautiful, and that's a great introduction. And IIE, it's like I said, this is a giant organization. It's amazing for international. I'm so happy to see so many good friends, old friends, and new friends here. It's really powerful, and it's humbling for me to be here. I was thinking about this morning when I fly. Because I was really born in a very little tiny village in Sichuan province in China. Tiny. My father still lives there, he's 87. And all the villagers practically were kind of illiterate or semi-illiterate. I think after first grade, I went back. I thought my father was the smartest man in the village. And I asked him to read one line of Chinese text. And then next day I went to school, the teacher read something different. So I lost faith in my father. Then after first grade, I thought I was the smartest man in the village. But then of course it turned out that, as most people say, you've done so much in your life. I said, well, really the first thing, I am a failed Chinese peasant. I mean, as a peasant, I failed. I was born in the village. I was supposed to do well. Everybody succeeded. So I was kind of the outcast of the village. So I had to go out. And my father still doesn't believe that I can make a living by talking to people. and which is it's kind of amazing. But now, let's come back. IIE. I think I may have to, because I'm moving here. Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I have several challenges tonight for you to think about. The IIE work is about open doors, about international exchange, about global competencies, and one of my biggest challenges in the 21st century for all of us to think about is how do we change our mindset. You know, I think I came out of a country that has used to believe people like this. That's how. That's how we Chinese look at everybody. You know, that's how you get the idea. So now, Alan, this IIE's job. Okay, how can we change that? Okay. Then I thought I didn't like that. I want to change. I want to denationalize my views. So I came to America, and now America views everybody like this. We gotta have the same idea, right? It's this the U.S. view of others. You know, it's the U.S. view like this. So we are, of course, the land of Boston. That's what we are.
There is still a little blue in the land of awesome, but
oh well. Last week, we don't know. Last week was turning blue. Now that's our job. If we, in 20 years, if we were able to change this, well, actually, I'm Clay from College Board. We have so many Chinese students come over here. If they leave, are they still going to maintain the same view? and how that view is going to clash with the line of awesomeness. I really think, seriously, I think the 21st century for me, I worry so much. The first thing I worry is this idea about how do human beings get along? You know, we're talking about economic prosperity, all those kind of, if we do not get along, we are going to be in big trouble. So now I think in the US, one of the things I've been tracing a lot is this idea of global competitiveness. And that's our education. Remember Obama said, we have to out-educate so we can out-compete others. And I mean, turn out actually it's not out-educate, it's out-testing other countries. America is doing more testing than everybody else. And so I think another issue I have is that, I just want to show this to my daughter, who is now at Emily School, who lives with Emily now in Punahou. So she's just turned 16 because, you know, she's Chinese, she has to skip a grade, so she's a senior. Yeah, you know, that's kind of required as an ethnical requirement. And I worry about her a lot about this. Now, my second challenge is really, when she graduates, what can she do? What kind of society will she live in? Because that's another issue today in the US. We kept talking about the idea of college and career readiness. Many of you perhaps are very aware of this. If you have children, they are doing the PARCC test, right? New York is the most tested state in the country. Congratulations. And I think cool boys can give you more. You know, it's kind of fun. And I come to New York all the time, talk to a lot of superintendents. And you know, one of the things, I was also looking at last week, many states began to talk about kindergarten readiness test. Do you guys have those? And in Maryland, and they want the children to have the ability to, the first ability to walk in straight lines. That's one thing. Sit quietly, and also raise hand, and be able to stay awake during the day. Not necessarily. That's Maryland's definition of school readiness. Now, what kind of kids are you going to get from out of that? And when I read that, I think the first time I heard about walking a straight line was when I got caught by a cop. I'm serious. Okay, walking. That's not my kindergartners. So when I look at my daughter, look at this situation, we talk about college readiness, and then what does college readiness deliver? Remember those kind of things? So the challenge right now, the second challenge comes to all of this, is this massive unemployment data I'm looking at. A lot of this, you know this unemployment data is huge. 2012 and 2014 is almost the same identical data in the US. It's recent college graduates. They were not only ready for college, they graduated from college. They paid, they borrowed the money. In American average, we got how many? $23,000 in debt, this country. That's a lot of money. And this issue, so in I think New York Times recently ran an article called "The Boomerang Kids." You know, the boomerang kids. You know, boomerang, they go out, they come back. That's my only Australian cultural intelligence I have. I know they have boomerangs. But anyway, so our children are like that. They go out, they come back, and they stay in our basement. They never leave. That's our issue. So I've been arguing about college readiness does not lead to out of the basement readiness. My definition of a good education is good. Can you keep my children out of my basement? And I've been using that a lot. But this data is really troublesome, this data. When I look at this data, it's not only US. China now graduates 7 million college students a year. I'm sure College Board would love to take the SAT, but they don't. Sorry about that. You know. But imagine, where do they have jobs? In Korea, in the president, when she was elected, she came out and said, okay, skip college. Just no jobs for you. College graduation. And I was just in the Netherlands. I did a lecture tour recently in the Netherlands, a tiny country. You know, they have the happiest kids. But they have one of the lowest rate youth unemployment in this country. But they are deeply concerned. They are very, I was told the Ministry of Education, many schools, they're very much concerned about their children not having jobs. The EU countries, by the way, this is actually, I'm being generous. I'm not showing the most recent data is bad. So this is the EU data. If you look at 2008 was better than 2012. And 2014 is even getting worse for youth. So globally speaking, we got about 100 million kids, youth, unemployed.
And in the US, this is the big challenge. What are we going to do with our kids when they graduate? And we send them all over to give them education. How do we define education? And that's, of course, another problem. If you're looking, if in the international scene, look at any international economics data, is that we have many countries say we don't have talents. Companies, we're talking about IBM in Nairobi, talk about, actually the US Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, every year they do a report about business in China. In China, the biggest problem is that the bureaucracy is not corruption, is the lack of talents. McKinsey produced a report that about 10% of Chinese college graduates are qualified to work in multinational companies. So I think it's quite shocking, right? In China, you have 1.3 billion people, 7 million college graduates annually, and you say you can't find people to work there? It's almost ironic. So we have this global talent shortage and global unemployment. You combine what we call a global talent mismatch. That's basically our facing. So that's our education is doing this, and we have a global talent mismatch. And at the same time, in the US today, we have a lot of, the unemployment there is actually not very reliable. Many of you know this. Some people just simply quit, they don't look for jobs. Some people are underemployed, they have a job, but it's not a real job. For example, a college major work at Starbucks. That's why, by the way, in New York, you're enjoying the best educated generation of bartenders. It's pretty cool, guys. Right? That's I don't know if they make better cocktail, but you have if they show you a degree, you can be proud. And actually, China now is trying to begin to require high school diploma for driving a taxi. So we will get better educated taxi drivers. I don't know, but that's good. So now we face this big paradox. This paradox of, in the US we have jobs, but we can't find the people. So what is the question? This is the second challenge. Once we have this, how do people get along? But the job concern is really big. And so there are different ways to look at this then. My interpretation tonight is that we have been basically not educating our kids poorly, but miseducating our children. We are still educating our children for an economy that does not exist. And the sad thing is that all our efforts right now is trying to perfect this old paradigm. You look at from the OECD's PISA, to all the international tests, to all these countries' common core. Australia is doing something called Australian curriculum. UK, by the way, is doing bad. I'm sorry. They have this English curriculum with Michael Gove, who just got fired. I think it's horrible. So all these countries, and because they all still look at the same paradigm to say this is what we need to do. This is our old education paradigm. If you look at everybody engaged in education. By the way, this paradigm drives what UNESCO does. Drives almost every country. So what they believe education is about. This is what I call the authoritarian approach. So we believe the outcome of education should be a set of skills, knowledge, talents, whatever you call that will make you a successful citizen in a certain society. And that description in recent years have been reduced really for economic prosperity. It's right now, it's talk about education equals employment equals economic viability. That's what we're talking about. So today, I'm going to remain talking about economic viability right now. Everybody's talking about that one idea. There's much more to education than just economic viability. Remember, to stay out of a basement even requires multiple skills. Stay out of a basement requires your financial independence, psychological independence, and social independence. Now today, let's talk about financial independence. So our schools have been trying to prescribe this. And this becomes what we call the curriculum. We have the curriculum, so then once we have the curriculum, then we say we're going to have some kind of verification of testing, and then we'll make sure schools can achieve that. So that's why in our traditional education, we have this grade level expectations. They come on course standards. Every state, New York has this, and they prescribe, by kindergarten, you do this. First grade, you would do this, and eventually, by 12th grade, you would do this. That's why, we have all this readiness kind of talks. I have a really strong problem with this called readiness in education. Education is not a job. You don't get ready for kindergarten. Kindergarten should always be ready for you. But Right? The same thing, college. You're not ready for college. But you're buying your education, I come here, you teach me. But this is very ironic, but that's because we have this mentality. We think it's a natural race, and a kind of course you run through. You do this much, you do this much. Now this is, of course, in a sense absurd, but we have accepted for 100 years. Over 100, we have no problem with it. We've been doing this for a long time. You have grade level. Your children, you by age 5, in first grade, second grade. We actually have that belief, which is completely unscientific. Your biological age does not correspond necessarily to your cognitive age or your emotional, and also in different domains, we're different. So let me actually take this idea just to say how absurd it is, but we like it, because it's very clear. Do you know that? You know why the Common Core is loved in the beginning by everybody? Because it's clear. They say, who doesn't want your kids to be college ready? Of course, I want my kids to be college ready, but of course it's impossible. But we like it. So imagine this. We have the standards. So we have the standards. That's what we believe. Imagine you want all Americans to be 5'7". I think that's an ideal kind of height for Americans. 5'7" is good. So that's kind of required for American citizenship. If you're not 5'7", you're not qualified as American. You have to go to Canada. Right? That's the idea. Now, that's because we have high standards for our people. It's the same thing. And then you say, okay, 5'7", to get to 5'7", in 18 years, each age you should grow maybe 10 inches. And so you have that, and you measure. I mean, a lot of parents actually do get nervous about this. Then parents go check. If my child did not grow 5 inches this month, I get very nervous. Then you say, okay, what am I going to do? So, well, first I got to probably go to give enough nutrition. So my kids can eat carrots and broccoli, everything. And tried everything, but still doesn't grow. What are you going to do now? We send them to remediation. It's we call. You buy stretchers at hospital or something. You stretch your kids at night to physical therapy. That's not what we're doing. We call them remediation, extra tutoring. That's what our kids. So overall idea is that the old paradigm is that we think we know what children need to succeed in the future. So we prescribe that. And they become the foundational experience of our children. Remember, when we do that, we're going to make some value judgment here. Very strong value judgment. Because people, as you know, we are different. Individual intelligence differences, you've heard a lot about, it's very traditional, it's been over there for a long time. Howard Gardner's been talking about multiple intelligence for a long, long time. I think many of you may remember those times. And we are different and talented. And when we are different and talented, when you make a judgment, what are we talking about is that you're basically saying some talents are more valuable than others. We make a curriculum. You notice that a curriculum? Our curriculum today favors what? We favor the language, we favor math, we favor logic. That's what our schools today teach. And everything else, if you're as wealthy as Punahou, you can add art and let Obama play basketball. That's what happened, right? That's what Obama Punahou. That's how it happened. So if you have wealth, but those were not common or core. Remember, we're making a judgment about these people. So when you make any kind of those standards, you are making discrimination, in essence, with children. And so not only discriminational in terms of when children come, if you are not good in what the school favors or the curriculum prescribes, that's the college board, SATs, right? SAT has nothing to do with how high you jump, right? I mean, that's kind of stuff. So you favor that part, and you actually are sorting children into different levels. And also, you also decide what opportunities you provide in schools. Remember, our schools, you look at through No Child Left Behind in the country, we have been narrowing our curriculum a lot in this country, especially for poor children, because we think basic reading, basic math is so important for this country. So that's how that's the old model. And the old model, by the way, this paradigm is also trying to homogenize all the diversities. We actually almost do not care what you do, what you know. We just want to make you what we want you to become. So this is the idea. But also it's very sad in this country, because I think in the US, I came to this country 20 years ago because I thought it was different. It's so diverse. And you know, right now in this country, the biggest conversation in education is about literacy and numeracy. It's very sad. If we were talking about this 200 years ago, there's a reason. Today, America, most advanced country, make it a national priority to what literacy and numeracy go. That's not very inspirational. But I think that's George Bush's problem. George made no child left behind. You know, George Bush actually, and he basically transformed a personal problem into a national problem. He had trouble, I think that's his issue. It's just, well, when you're the president, you can do that. You know, I can't read. I assume nobody can read. That's the kind of things I think this country is going down in that regard. So we are making a national flaw. We should assume people can make a national. We make a national scene right now. So this is now that all the. By the way, you look at all international tests. Is really about that. They all measure basic things. They were competing over those things. And we're not allowing you time. The PISA, TIMSS, all of those things. So they were all measuring this kind of thing. So the old model prepared people to find jobs, but those jobs disappeared. That's basically how it has happened. And now, how did those jobs disappear? And we were looking for those things. But this model worked very well in the industrial age, actually. It's sad, but it worked. Because first off, you could predict the kind of jobs you have. Remember, you could. In my village, for example, my father was able to predict the most people in the village would have to drive a water buffalo. So my village's common core standard was driving a water buffalo. And I was not very good at that, so I was not ready to get out. So that's the thing. So, but even he failed. You could not predict all the time until the 1980s when China opened up. Driving water buffaloes of no value. The skills, talents, the value of talent and skills always gets redefined. And in the 1600s, in the 1700s, before the industrial revolution, most of people would value your farming skills. But they were of little value once you moved to the city. You know, in Birmingham, I love to say, how did the industrial revolution happen in England? You know, Birmingham is a good place to do all this research. And so we could predict. Now today, when someone said, "Now I want to make sure your children are ready for career in 20 years," do you really believe that? Just look at yourself. What kind of careers we can't? I would say, John, in the same career, banking itself is redefined multiple times in many ways. So that's the kind of things. Another thing I think before this model worked, because there are many different talents who could not be very useful, who cannot be useful. Imagine, I was thinking about, Lady Gaga would have a hard time finding a job with Henry Ford. Really, how she would be useless. So think about it. Right? So a lot of those talents. Actually, if you look at, I was in the Van Gogh Museum. You look at Van Gogh. How many they're great artists, but not many artists could be supported for a long time. So there's not those kind of things. So a lot of talents have to be suppressed. Extremely creative, different talent. I would think Steve Jobs would be useless in our village. He would suffer the same. He would be a bad peasant. That's the kind. So we could. Another reason it worked is because in most of the traditional society, many of the jobs really required mediocrity, seminar skills. You look at any testing. Testing actually tests how good you are at being mediocre. Do you notice that in any test? Now, even you get 100% on the test, you can be no better than the test. Think about Albert Einstein. I think he was a good physicist, right? He was a good physicist. But if he took the New York's ratings test on physics, science, the best that he could score is from the best as your 10th grader. So you think Albert Einstein's physics is as good as a 10th grader? Because he could score. I'm going back. I'm going to make fun of college boards. So thanks for being representing the college board. And can you imagine on the SAT? No matter how good you are as a mathematician, you cannot get more than 800, right? So you appear as good. So we only want you to be there. It's called measured mediocrity. Another problem is that people, I don't like any of the tests, even the tests who claimed to solve problem solving, like PISA. So they have a problem solving test. And they say Singapore is number one, then Shanghai was number two, Korea, all those things. I was actually in Singapore. I talked to the Minister of Education. I said, well, I don't really care, you can solve problems. Because what's more important is, do you know what problem to solve? I mean, can you propose a problem that's worth solving? That's actually probably more important than, this little problem. So many of those tests. But traditionally, we only needed those mediocre type of jobs. We did not need a lot of people work on millions of jobs. So that's why we have this ability to predict, to prescribe and impose, and all our children acquire something. We have a degree, we do all those things. And schools have always dominated two things, They monopolize learning and they monopolize credentialing. That's what our schools do. We give a credential and people were lazy. We hire you because of the credential. So now I think learning may not be monopolized anymore because of technology, but credential is still being monopolized. There's still credential in those parts. So but the credential, remember that's when we get a college degree. Why don't you have a job? Because your credential may not even match a job description. I mean, in college education, we always have to match our education with a profession. And we have leadership programs, we prepare school principals. From a credential certificate, line with those, whether you're good or not, you're going to have the job like that. But now that's changing, and this big shift is that society has changed, society always changed, and we don't change very often, called dramatic push. There's a book, I think, written by two Harvard economists, talk about the race between technology and education. The argument is that education is always trying to catch up to technology. Because a few individuals will create technology and they will redefine the value of talent. And today we think literacy is so important, but really that was because of Gutenberg. Just imagine the whole thing. Without Gutenberg, so that's actually, I don't blame George Bush, I blame Gutenberg for inventing this thing. Without him, we don't have to read it. Who cares? This technology really adds value. I was in Oman, actually, it was September, was interesting, because they are worried about the country. At that time, oil price was not dropping that fast. So they were already talking about this idea, because like a Saudi Arabia minister once said, the Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones. So now they're worried about the oil age might end. So it was a ton of oil. As you should thank, thank all the combustion engine guys, because you just happen to sit there. Oil suddenly become of value. So human beings have all this reserve. We have all these reserve talents. Then technology come in to change the value of those things. For example, our two legs. We have two legs or byproducts. We can ride bikes. It's very interesting. By the way, someone interpreted another way around. They said, "I'm so thankful that God gave us two legs so we can wear our pants." Yeah, imagine, right? Yeah. Whew, okay. So that takes some time to rethink about it. So that's the same as college readiness, as kindergarten readiness, right? And you can be ready for college kindergarten. It's the other way around. If we had 3 legs, we would have pants with 3 legs. But anyway, so what changed? You all know this. It's really two big shifts. One change is called the arrival of the second machine age. Many of you read this book, and it's talked about digital age. Basically now, the first machine age was the steam engine age that changed our society, and today the second machine age is digital technology that changes how we organize, especially how our cognitive functions work. And that's displacing lots of high-end jobs. You probably have noticed that some of the high-end jobs here it's actually quite scary how we've lost so many jobs to other kind of things. And I was trying to find this picture that it's really, if I can find it, it'll be really cool. Okay, here. So look at this one. So this was, a lot of jobs were like this. Not a lot of jobs like this. So this is one of the factors. Look at, when I first came to this country, it was really amazing. We had I saw a lot of accountants. H&R Block guys in tax. Remember those people in the shopping mall? You're too young to remember that, right? Remember there, I came there and I had, of course, no money to pay tax, but I didn't know what they're doing. In China, China was a great country, nobody pays tax. At that time, but nobody owned anything. The emperor only gave you something to live, that's all. And so, now, do you see them at all? anti-dark block accountants, they're not in the mall, they're not doing tax for most people. The masses are going to TurboTax. And also many of you perhaps noticed that America now has a surplus of lawyers. Law schools have a hard time attracting them. I said, why? People said, well, we're still suing each other as much as possible. America is not still interested in suing, so don't worry about that. We just don't need as many lawyers. It's very simple. Legal workers, because before what they do a lot of research. Remember the time it was very hard to search without Google? Remember those things? You get used to this thing, and we employ a lot of people to go through the case books. And now we don't need them. And medicines transform a lot of them. So that's one big thing. And so now the question people always ask me in education, are you teaching anything your children, are you equipping your children with skills and knowledge that cannot be done by machines? So if something can be done by machines, it will be done by machines in the future, no matter how complex. And you probably noticed that the Google car is coming, by the way, Google car. Have you guys seen this Google car? I'm thinking about all the limousine drivers, the taxi drivers, the cops. By the way, this is one thing about Google cars, you can drink and drive, nobody will arrest you. And so that's why we don't need as many cops. So did you notice that? We don't need driver's education. There's a lot of new changes, but the technology can change this whole thing, shifting a lot. Another big question we talk about is called Thomas Friedman, and many things I don't agree with, but one thing I would agree is he announced the arrival of the age of globalization. Kind of announced that. This is what, in education, it basically means one big thing for us is our human talent is global. That's what IIE is talking about. It's everywhere. And then if you take a very economic analysis, once it's become mobile, it's become a global market. Some talents are worth more than others. But if you're investing more in cultivating the same talent that can be acquired cheaper in other places, the talents have no value. So we've been doing outsourcing, offshoring all the time, right? We've seen a lot of jobs out there. By the way, which is also a challenging question. I ask a lot of people, say, if a Chinese student come here and spend Chinese comes here and spend $200,000 US, maybe, versus only like 40,000 RMB in China. And so are they buying the same education? Are we offering better education, not better, but offering different kind of education? So America's schools, public schools today, we spend $125,000 per student for 12 years. It's public schools. New York spends a lot more. If you go to Scarsdale, they're probably doing a lot more. And but China and India, you probably know there's India perhaps less than 10,000 for 10 years, for 12 years. Now, if we are equipping them with the same skills, it's not only globally competitive anymore, but it's also actually immoral to think about it. So when I hear about Americans, our students, we want to outcompete Chinese, Indians. It's immoral because $125,000 per student, that's spending, government spending, versus $10,000. $125,000 can buy up multiple villages in my area. So I told my son, by the way, my son, he just graduated from college, and he was very college ready, but he was not. So he was ready. He got into one of the most expensive colleges in Chicago, University of Chicago, but he was not so ready. He never get any money for it, so I got to pay for that. It was very bad. Imagine $125,000 plus another, $50,000 to $200,000. That's a lot of money. So if you're trying to compete for a job that pays little, that's really immoral. So that's another globalization means that we have the moral responsibility to create jobs and opportunities for others. And that's why, by the way, it explains why we don't have jobs. So we were educating people to find employment, find jobs. But those jobs have been highly mobile or replaced by machines or can be offshored. And this is why we've seen the loss of massive job losses. And in America, many of you may be so concerned right now about the disappearance of the middle class. The middle income group in the US, this is massive. This is actually quite global. In almost every developed country, we're seeing a widening gap. Many reasons for this. One of the reasons, I would say, is that traditional middle class jobs have disappeared, and we have not created the new middle class. So America needs to create, every country, the new middle class. The challenge is that who is the new middle class? That's what I would like to say. I remember this for developing countries, we face the same issue. How do they rise? So, and not surprisingly, if you look into historical data, this is nothing strange, nothing new. 1800 to 2009, this is the shifting of labor force. We're losing farming. We're saying many people become employees, workers. Workers dip, this is called technology transformation. Whenever you have a transformation, something happens, we call paradigm shift. You know, it's from agricultural to industrial, industrial, post-industrial. So we're seeing the rise of two groups, the service sector and the creative class. And service sector are those people who are not paid much, but the creative class is going. Today, America has about 35% of labor force called the creative workers right now. 35. It's not the highest. We're about ranks about like 19 in the number percentage of that. So now, for education, how do we shift this? What can we do for the future? The big challenge, many of you may think about this, okay, how do we create jobs? I think today all our problem is that we still think about government will create jobs for us. We still think that somebody's creating something. So our kids just have to be ready for a career. Well, the answer is that's probably no. Everybody from my little village to Oregon to New York, everybody has to change their mindset. We have to become the creator, the entrepreneur who create jobs and opportunities for ourselves and for others. This is the big shift. Because technology, when you take certain things away, it creates new opportunities. So one of the issue we face is that how do you become creative? Now, creativity was not such a big hot thing for a long time. And if you go to Google Books, you can find creativity as a concept was not even written about, was not even mentioned in Google Books until after 1920s. Only after 1980s, it began to be talked about. But we've been writing about children for a long time. Children versus creativity. That's why we look at very few mentions. Nobody cared about creativity. And that's why today, even though in a lot of our school standards, we write down creativity, we really don't mean it. When I talk about the Maryland idea, that's not creative people, you know. So if you look at, I've seen a lot of, this kid would be absolutely not ready for kindergarten in Maryland. But this kid is kind of creative. Creativity means simply originality, being original, being different from others' norm. So do you put up with that? Do you tolerate that? That's the question. And creativity, schools stifle creativity very successfully. There's some of the data we see. Our kids come to our school at age 5, when there are 98% of them are creative at the genius level. Then after 5 years in our schools, by the way, the better the school is, the more successful we kill it. You know, so we got 32% left when they're age 10. The 3rd and 4th grade slump is a big, well-documented global phenomenon. But at that time, you drop. And then by the time they reach age 15, 10% are left. That's how we lose. So I just wrote several articles about how China lost. Creativity, let's not talk about teaching it first. Let's talk about how not to kill it. You know, that's the first thing. By the way, I think, you know, we have a lot of people from different countries. Chinese, Indians always think Americans know how to teach creativity better. We don't. Our schools don't. Actually, we're horrible. We're as bad, you know. But as an education system, not class, as a school system, you know, we don't teach creativity any better. We just killed it less successfully than Chinese. We're not very good at it. That's it. And now we're trying to be as successful as the Chinese to killing creativity. That's how we're trying to do with all the standards. And there's actually reason for this. You know, just if you follow creativity to age 44, that's most of us, but 2% are left creative. But after retirement, creativity has a chance to bounce back. So this is a lot of what George Bush is painting, you know. This is because George has regained his creativity. You know, everybody has. Now look at this golden. This is amazing. This is very good data to show one thing. Creativity is not only cognitive ability. It is very psychological. Do you allow yourself to be different? Do you learn to comply or do you learn to be original? Remember, that's why in the Silicon Valley, in different places, Birmingham once had those bars. After they have a few beers and they get creative. They allow. There's no self-monitoring process. So this is something really important. That after retirement, he said, "Hey, I don't care anymore. I have a few years to live. I'm going to do whatever I like." That's very liberating. So education, one thing education kills creativity. It does not really get the creativity out. It really simply teaches you you're not rewarded. You might be punished for being different. Look, all testing is about compliance, right? It's about obedience. It's about complying with that. This is one thing. By the way, as a society, we also lose creativity to cheating, to scandals, because cheating is a very creative form of applying of creativity. If you go to China, China has a lot of very creativity. But they create little tiny things, how to cheat, how to fool the government, basically in China, the whole thing. That's very dictatorial systems do that. So this tells about one thing. In our schools, we got to focus a lot more on creativity. But creativity today, our thinking, we want to teach creativity. We think creativity is for everybody. It is, but creativity needs discipline. Creativity needs to apply in different domains. So, but if you want to be productively creative, you cannot be generically creative in everything. Creativity is emotional. It's not about, are you able to come up with new ideas? First, do you want to? Or do you think you can be? You're encouraged to. That's the part our schools teach completely nonsense right now. I know right now I've been debating with the Common Core people. They said, well, creativity still needs knowledge. Of course, it needs discipline, it needs knowledge, but it starts with passion. Because now when you're trying to teach people first, right now we get the horse and cart relationship wrong. Was to say we teach you the basics so you can be creative. The basics should be sought after. Because right now we impose on people. And in New York, actually, you had one time Commissioner Joel Klein. I think one time actually I met him. I said, "What are you doing? You're making your children hate reading." I said, "Do you not care?" He said, "Yeah, I don't care." I said, "If they can't read, if they hate reading, I don't care." I said, "No, that's wrong. That's what we're doing right. We think you need the basics." But there's a lot of data showing that if child hates something, it's not going to work. Not going to be creative. Now the second reason we can be entrepreneurial, we can be creative. So creativity is required, entrepreneurship is required, but also we need to recognize today, we really have arrived at the time that any talent is valuable. Traditionally useless people have become useful. Like Kim Kardashian is a good example. Does she live here? Does she live in New York? No, okay, that's good. So okay. When I'm in California, Los Angeles, I go to a lot of private schools. Always I talk. I'm always nervous if Kim might be in the audience. But she should be happy. Traditionally useless people have become useful. This is really interesting to think about how. Well, there are much worse people. In the U.S. today, we have 21 million people engaged in entertainment. Only 8 million in automobile industry. The big shift, huge change. Entertainment is something new. So the 21st century, we have arrived at two things. One is what Daniel Pink called the age of abundance. Another is called the globalized world. What does age of abundance have to do with this? Age of abundance basically means that we consume unnecessary things, or psychological things, or art, or music, or writing. And that's why we consume this. We consume choice. First in the U.S., because the largest commodity in most developed countries is choice. Once people have little money, they want choice. And choice, for me, I came up with the age of necessity. In my village, we consume things that was necessary, physical, for survival. So when I first came to this country in 1995, I could not buy shampoo to wash my hair. It's really hard because I did not know what kind of hair I had. Do you guys know that? You have normal, oily, or dry. You have to go hire a hair consultant for this. I still don't know what kind of hair I have. I just, it's disabled. But then today, if you go to the whole department, you see how many choices, different brands, different types, and different shapes. I have no, do we need them? It's they're like Kim Kardashian, you don't need her. But you want them. That's the idea. So that's why we want this. So today we consume psychological products. And psychological products and spiritual products are by themselves very diverse, unlike necessity. Necessity is not diverse. Food, shelter, clothing. And even food today becomes a psychological product. In New York, you go to a restaurant, the more money you spend, the less food you get. Do you guys notice? So we have come to arrive at a time. We have no need to predefine what talent is valuable. And then we need to move on to, so number one, creativity. Number two, unique niche talents, preserve them. Do not stifle them. And finally, we got to come to the idea of a thinking, which is called entrepreneur thinking. Entrepreneur thinking is not only about business. It's a lot more. So what I would call this one, we need to move from employees to entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are both social entrepreneurs, many of you, Rika, you're engaged in social entrepreneurship, LINEglobal, IIE, I think we need a lot more intrapreneurs. That's what the companies are hiring. In Apple computers is, if you want to be managed, you are not employable. If you look at Google's new hiring requirement, they're looking for intrapreneurs, entrepreneurs working within the organization. We need policy entrepreneurs. And what makes great entrepreneurs? A lot of research debate about this. Confidence, friends, risk-taking, creativity. That's a lot of different things. It's basically soft side. We call them soft skills, non-cognitive skills, and of course global competency. Now, all of this are not measured. I'm teaching a class in the University of Oregon. They're all principles. When they do teacher evaluation, we don't want to evaluate this. We evaluate teachers as instructors. So today, internationally, globally speaking, we still focus on all the comparison. Nothing to do with this. How do you make friends? You got to spend time to make friends. How do you socialize? We still spend time thinking about the cognitive things is valuable. Parents, teachers, politicians are misguided by the old paradigm. We're still trying to say how much you've mastered what I want you to master. Instead of how well you've developed your own way, responsibility. So let's look at some of the historical data, the very quick data if you want to look at it. It's very fascinating data. For example, one thing is about America. It was the American education. Why do we have the common core? Why do we do no child left behind? Because we have a global achievement gap. Means we think American education is getting worse, is in decline. New York Times comes up with this report every few days. I can tell you, American education is not in decline, it's not getting worse, it has always been horrible. It has been bad for a long time. You remember at the time when Life magazine reported American education was worse than Soviet Union? You remember a test in 1964, the first international mathematics study, American students scored 12 out of 12 countries? That's pretty bad, it's worse. America has never scored well. But you want to say, okay, Obama said, hey, we're still here. Obama said, America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. Largest, maybe gone in a few years. China is going to become large. Prosperous, highest per capita, and more productive than others. It's true. That's going to be true. And what this is, some of them are facts, and they are written, but they're more factual than some of Obama's other facts. But this is quite good. It's good. And it's factual good. So if you ask, why is America still here? So let me give you some of the data. America accidentally had more creativity, more entrepreneurship, and more confident kids. So look, some international test scores. There was 2003 American students. Math scores ranked way below Asian countries, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Hong Kong. But on the same test, they asked about confidence. And as you can guess, Americans, we may be stupid, but we are smart, we're confident. American students out-confident everybody. So that's what somebody that inspired a cartoon like this. It may be wrong, but it's how I feel. So that actually is a global phenomenon. Countries with higher test scores has lower confidence and lower enjoyment in math. It's also a newer phenomenon. This is a longitudinal phenomenon. Recently, Korea, China, higher scores, lower confidence. Lower scores, higher confidence and value. Singapore, Hong Kong, Singapore, by the way, The Shandong students, by the way, they were #1 in skills, but they were the lowest in interest in reading. They wouldn't want to read, you know, and they have no confidence. Singapore was just recently article, they need entrepreneurship. South Africa recently said the same thing. The biggest predictor of entrepreneurship is actually confidence. So I just take some of the data and said, okay, are people, do they feel confident as an entrepreneur? There's a global entrepreneurship monitor data shows Singapore #1 in math, but almost the lowest in entrepreneurship confidence. This is adults. Do they believe they can become entrepreneurs? And Japan, you look at all these countries, so there is also a negative correlation in this regard as well, all entrepreneurship education. So, by the way, people love Finland. Finland has the same problem. Finland students are good at science, but Finnish students have no interest in science. And so they are very worried, the lack of interest, if you have no interest. So what I would end to suggest, it's time to shift our paradigm. Traditionally, we want to teach people something. Today, we should follow the child. So I have, in my book, talk about how do we change the paradigm to about enhancing every child, to believe every child can become great. Education is about growth. And do not worry about their future. They will create their career. The only secure career is the one they create themselves. And the society is so big. So global competency help us to understand the global market, global partners, and global customers. And I will not have time to go through all of this. So I have a suggestion, as I think Mr. Goodman talked about. You can read my book as I talk in there. This is the old book, explains how education paradigm is necessary, must shift. And my most recent current book is the one about China, which really explains a lot of the opposite of the US. Why China has the best and worst education. It is the best old paradigm. So if you look at America and China, they're both on the traditional paradigm. But China was the most successful traditional paradigm. It's been practiced for thousands of years by the emperor. The emperor wants compliant people. Emperor has no interest in creative people. He was very, they were very successful. They kept China going on for 2,000 years as a peaceful agricultural society. So that system ended. America felt bad because it was not as obsolete as China. So now with Obama, with all the education reforms in this country now, we're trying to make ourselves as obsolete as China so we can have better test scores. And I wrote this, there's a little tiny op-ed piece come out of CNN on Friday. So if you want to read that, and here's my, if you want to communicate with me, you can download most of the slides there. You can follow me on Twitter, or you can email me with any of the questions. And I know I'm almost kind of running out of time, but I'll be here chatting. I'll always be happy to answer some questions as well. So to end, my daughter's future lies in the shifting of education paradigm. We have to trust, if Lady Gaga is useful, anyone can be useful. But everybody has to be great, has to be creative, entrepreneur, and the non-cognitive has risen to the front. So we need to shift our thinking about education. Globally, the unemployment problem cannot be solved by one government creating jobs. It has by every little individual taking the responsibility and use the resource, use their entrepreneurship mindset to create jobs and opportunities for themselves and for each other. Thank you.
Would you like to sit or be up for a
Oh,
while?
you can stand.
Okay.
I'm a teacher, I can stand for 4 hours.
Okay. I'll do the same then. Good evening, everyone. I'm Rajika Bhandari, Deputy Vice President for Research and Evaluation at IIE, and thank you, Professor Zhao, for a really stimulating presentation, and you've certainly provoked a lot of thoughts and questions for me. So I'll be moderating the discussion, and I thought I'd start out by posing a question to you, and I know
all of you probably have a lot of questions or comments also. So my first question is, I just have a 5-year-old who started kindergarten. And all I could think of, well, one of the many things I could think of as you were presenting was that this is a pretty dire scenario that you've painted. And I'm thinking about all the choices I've made and other parents make when they're at this juncture. So my question to you is, you've talked about sort of the 3 key areas, but if we take it down to the actual school level, what would that ideal school look like on a daily basis? Would it even be a structured school?
No, if you were in a school, I would suggest you look at 3 elements. Number 1 is the curriculum is driven by students, or it is prescribed. Because in this country, we can afford to personalize curriculum. They should ask what the student wants to learn. Your daughter, what she wants to do, and then evolve that out of it. And then she should be engaged in making things. She should be thinking about serving other people very young. Like 5-year-old, how can she be of value to other people? Remember our children, for 12 years, they're basically spending money. If you ask people, so why do you, if you disappeared, who would care? You know, so someday I think as good entrepreneur is always to say, use your resource, your efforts to better other people's life. Ask your daughter, say, is the school engaging her in making something like authentic products to help others? And is the school, this is the IIE, and is the school itself automatically a global campus? Remember, I'm not talking about entrepreneurship education as a club. Education has to be entrepreneurial. The WEF said the same thing, is the whole education orientation has to change. It's just not adding one more course. So is your daughter every day engaged in global connections? Is your daughter writing a book for students in China, English textbook? She could be recording iBooks, all those things. And so if school's interested, I have all those indicators. If I were to look, I actually use this look for school for my children. You know, do students have student voice in the governance? Do students have a broad curriculum? I'll be happy to give some of this to you. So how do you engage schools? There's different things. And overall thing is that, are your children given the autonomy to drive their own education? Because now we manage our children as employees. When they come to clock in, they do this job, they get grades, they're paid, they go home, they're happy. They never take real responsibilities. So that's the kind of things we need to change.
Absolutely, and it's interesting that you sort of mentioned what I would call the character building component of it, because I see that as one of the biggest challenges today, that how do we build character? And we're living in an age of excess, as you mentioned, so how do we really sort of build that sensibility towards others and build that character from an early age? So do we have questions, thoughts, comments? And please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lucy Gray. And I'm curious about how you think entrepreneurial thinking should be cultivated in public schools. I think a lot of us here are from private schools, and they get that. But in the public schools, I think that the direction is going in the opposite direction there. So what do we do to kind of change that and encourage? I think it's a huge equity issue.
Well, I think that's precisely the private schools. Some private schools, by the way, are actually going to the dark side too. They are adopting the Common Core. Notice that they are adopting that. It's very sad. They are giving up because they think the parents are demanding. Once you have this thing and these standards, people really try to measure on those things. It's very, very dangerous. And now I know PISA is trying to sell them to schools. PISA for schools. First of all, private schools, please stay independent. Do not invite unnecessary tyrannies to your school. But states are trying to. America invited that thing. That's my new book is really written for America. I said America has been on a suicidal mission, in a suicidal mission for education excellence, because they define education excellence as those test scores in a few subjects. So public schools, you come to New York. I think I came out of extreme poverty. I don't know if this is intentional. I'm not a conspiracy theorist in this country. I don't know if it's intentional or not. But the way we treat poor kids in this country is completely disabling. That's how we treat in China. When I was in China, 97 people starved in my village. What the communists did, they shipped food to you. But there's not much. But they did not allow you to create your own life. Remember that they plan everything. So you have to plant rice 4 seasons a year. They actually control everything. But then they give you something. You don't. People still starved. The communists did something, nothing. Based in 1978, they allowed farmers to farm on their own, make their own farming decision. We solved the food problem over a year. So I think right now we always have this deficit belief about other people. In public school, we don't think you can do this, so here I am come to save you. It's like your philosophy. You look at in many schools, I really believe people are able to self-govern. Democracy comes from this idea of that, really, in ordinary people, there's extraordinary in that spirit, but we don't believe, I think we've lost that in America. So now we want to govern. We want to think, I have a solution for you. And this is, in this whole country. So I really think that the national discourse spirit has to change. And unless we stop that, we're really going to be in trouble. I write a lot of these books. I'm not really, seriously, I worry more about where the future of humanity, because America has many problems. I'm not growing from America. We have a Congress ranked lower than most entertainers. That's horrible, but we have to think about how do we push forward, because we can see the rise of the authoritarian regimes getting more effectiveness. So we're glorifying that piece, and without thinking about the human sacrifices. So what I think, that question is not about public schools, it's really about a national discourse. Yes?
I am probably one of the few public school teachers here. And when I hear what you're saying, there's so much to say, but I won't say it all.
Say it all.
But when I hear what you're saying, I have 5 years left. Never in a million years did I think I would be retiring. I'm ready to retire. I don't like the way public school is going. And I have 5 years left, and in those 5 years, I'm hoping to change the mindset. Empathy is the one thing that I spend a lot of time on in my classroom, but I do it quietly. And, it's disheartening to hear that Lucy was asking for a solution, but the solution is I have to wait for everything else to change in order to do what's right in my classroom with my public school kids. And there has to be a better answer.
That's you. I've been encouraged this because there are several things I observed that's very sad. A lot of school teachers and leaders actually bought into the old regime. They think we need to fix, they think we need a common core. Once you teach to a standard, teaching becomes much more mechanical, much easier. It's actually easier to teach, have those standards, those things. You know this very well. But at the same time, what I would like to see is more teachers like you, like us. We have to stand up to talk about this thing. I'm very sad to say this country, we have lost a momentum. New York actually is better. You get in Iowa on Long Island or the Westchester County. I visit a lot of schools. Their parents are rising up to opt out to test. The teachers should stand up. Because I think a lot of us are, again, waiting for someone to remove these requirements, the policies. I don't think it's we can't wait. We invited these policies. Remember the no child left behind account? It was a bipartisan support. Nobody's holding this accountable. Remember this? After 10 years, nobody said, I have nothing to have, I created everything. I have nothing to do with it. It's a broken law. How many teachers' lives were ruined? School principals, kids, 10 years, and we still haven't fixed it. And nobody's going to go back to Congress and say, you guys didn't fix that. And now with Obama, $4 billion on race to the top, do you think we're going to have major education outcome in this country? No. But we kind of wish them, I think citizens have to do this. We really have to go back to much more local. That's the book I'm going to write about. Next book I'm writing is called Leading the Counter-Revolution. We have to forget one big dictator or one big great guy, a benevolent dictator, or the Deus Ex Machina, the machine from the God machine will come out and solve us problem. I think we have to do it. And this is also our talk about citizenship. Our students, if you go with the Jeffersonian idea, public education is ready to cultivate better voters. Look at our schools. The common core has nothing to do with you being a citizen. being a voter, a character education, empathy. It's all about math and literacy. I really think we've been misguided by those things. Yes. You're moderating. I should.
No, you don't really need me. I also stand here, or sit here for that matter, as a public educator beside my husband, who's in the independent school world. And what we both struggle with has to do with the outcomes for our teachers. In creating teachers that are entrepreneurial, that are passionate, that are creative, how do we set out to provide our students with the teachers that should be revered and brought forward in order to accomplish this mission as you put in front of us?
Well, I've seen a lot of schools doing this, but unfortunately they are more in private schools. I think they are, one thing, I will start with one as a school. If you're a principal, if you're a school leader, is to basically ignore all the government mandates as unnecessary nuisance. I treat them as mosquitoes. You cannot get rid of them, they're here, and I don't wait for them to die before you do your own business. And I think also those regulations have created excuses for public schools not to do things. You know, some are genuine reasons, some there's also we call the self-drawn prisons. We can't do anything. That's called, we invited that. And I haven't seen a teacher or principal going to jail for trying to stop the Common Core. Okay, not yet. You know, it's maybe New York, maybe New Jersey that can happen. And so the second thing is really give teachers. You know what does entrepreneurs mean with confidence? Really help them to reimagine how education can be done. Teachers are happy. Like, I'm sure. I don't think very often teachers are invited as a group to say, how do we want to run the school? In that is not even given this opportunity to entrepreneur. And thirdly, you will say, look at different resources. Ask teachers, you are a person. What are you interested in doing? Those are some of the simple things we can drive along. And they're not really great. I don't really believe in great step-by-step books. I refuse to write some of them. Right? So, sometimes teachers want them. I think the next book I'm writing is really treating schools as communities. Remember like employee-owned banks, community banks? We really co-create the whole place.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, sorry. But as Professor Zhao said, everything's available on his website, so please take a look, follow up with him. We have a very nice reception to follow, so be sure to follow up with him with any burning questions that you have, and I'll turn it over to Rekha to
Thank
offer.
you.
Thank
We
you.
just want to say thank you everyone for coming today, and Mr. Yang Zhao, thank you.